Hello, and thank you for joining us for this Webisode episode on bullying. And what we're going to talk about specifically in this one is how can parents help their child heal from bullying. And this Webisode is part of a series that is being sponsored by Mission Healthy Living. And joining me today is Audrey Leffler, and Audrey is a full-time outpatient therapist, and she's also the coordinator of the Children's SAFE program on domestic violence, and she's with the Creative Health Services. Audrey, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
This is such an important topic. Our series has kind of carried us through the evolution, through what can parents do, what are some signs, and now we're kind of almost at the end. Children have gone through it, they've identified it. How can they heal from this? Most children are very resilient, so you think they're going to bounce back, but there's got to be some kind of lasting effects having an experience like this. So what are some of these lasting effects that parents can expect their children to really have?
Well, first of all, I really think in talking to my coworkers at Creative Health that children aren't really as resilient as what we may think.
That's interesting.
So I think we tend to, when we're bullied, or any person, when we feel humiliated or ashamed, we tend to hold it inside. It's one of the hardest things to share with other people. So with a child, what we see, a lot of times it's very underreported when they're being bullied, and they'll hold it inside, and as we know in therapy, they repress it and hold the feelings in, and if the feelings are strong enough, or if they continue to be bullied, then the tendency is to sometimes become depressed, have low self-esteem, or a lot of times increased anxiety, and then I think along with that is sometimes feelings of suicide. I found a statistic that said that half of the teens who committed suicide, it was related to bullying.
Wow.
So that's
and we've heard about that in the news. That's
right. It's been very much in the news. So those are some of the most outrageous, I think, long-lasting effects. But there's also, I think, what happens with a child if they're bullied often enough, they become they almost like a victim. They feel like a victim, and they feel less than other people, and that goes along with their self-esteem. But also, I think they become disenfranchised with the world in general, or with other people, or they start to ostracize, and then they go inside and they tend to become isolated from other people, and they don't really form the best relationships, and they might grow up at some point to have less relationships that are one person is dominant, or they're the dominant person. And I think what happens, too, when they're younger is they tend to then themselves become a bully sometimes. And they pick on somebody they perceive as less powerful than them, or somebody that's more vulnerable.
So the cycle can continue.
Right, so it's a vicious cycle.
Wow. Those are some serious things,
Right.
which really brings to mind how important this topic is and how important it is to actually address it. So
Right.
how can a parent, I'm sure therapy definitely would be recommended if it's incredibly serious, but is there a place that a parent can start to help their child heal from this? What's the best way a parent what should they do for their child after the experience is over so none of this comes to fruition?
Well, I think first of all, since we know that it's very prevalent online and also at school, that bullying is very common. And so I think what parents can do to be proactive is to start to talk to their child about it, and to define it, and to actually say this is what bullying is about, so the child is sort of on some level prepared for this to happen, whether it happens or doesn't. But I think beyond anything, it's really important to be a good listener for your child. And that means to validate their feelings, not to minimize their feelings or say they shouldn't feel that way. Because what a parent wants to do is to open the door for the child to disclose to them, to feel comfortable enough to disclose to them. So we don't want to bully the child by saying, you shouldn't feel that way,
Right.
or I know what's better for you.
Right, so they should follow that same path. Like, they know the child has been bullied,
Right.
and the experience is done, the bullying has stopped. Should they still continue to talk to the child and encourage them to discuss their feelings and make sure that they're okay?
I don't think that they should necessarily over-dramatize it,
Okay.
or become overly preoccupied on it. I think it's important to be there, be supportive, but to try to feel the situation out to see if what the child really needs. Does the child need intervention?
Right.
And when we talk about bullying, we're talking about power and control in relationships a lot of times. And so what we want to do is develop power for that child, develop personal power and a feeling that they can handle the situation. So we want, as a parent, to guide them, but to also be there for them and to help them through the process if they do need that. But to, ask them questions and say, well, what do you think you could have done differently? Or was there something that you feel you did wrong? Because we don't want them to think it was their fault.
Right, exactly.
It's not necessarily their fault, and most times it isn't their fault.
Right.
If they're being picked on.
Right. How can a parent make sure that children don't lose focus of who they are and empowering themselves?
I think that if they're being bullied, they don't necessarily have low self-esteem.
Right.
But if they do, as a result of it, I think it's important to talk to them about what a healthy relationship is. Mm-hmm. And hopefully the parents know what a healthy relationship is and what makes a good friend. What are the qualities you would look for in a person that would make them a good friend? Mm-hmm. Obviously somebody who's honest, somebody who treats you with respect, mm-hmm. Somebody who there's a give and take feeling in the relationship where you don't feel like they're dominating you or you're dominating them very much. So I think, first of all, the parents can talk to the child, but I think in general, even if there isn't a bullying incident, that what a parent can do is look at the whole person of their child, look at them for both their positive and their negative qualities. Mm-hmm. I think all too often as parents, because we're either busy or tired or whatever, we tend to look at the negative and we overemphasize the negative. And I think a lot of times what we need to do is look at the child and let them know that we see the positive. Mm-hmm. That's so important to their self-esteem, especially since you're their parents and you're the ones that are around them 24/7.
And they're going to listen to what you say. They're going to absorb all of that. They take it to heart. So.
Very much so.
Right.
So even like going out of your way to give them positive reinforcement. Oh, you really did that well. Or I think you did, I'm so glad you did so well in school at this particular thing that you did. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is that they can notice that they're doing well. And
just finally, Audrey, how can a parent help their child make sure, and I think you've touched on a little bit of it, but is there tools that they can give them that they've gone through a bullying experience, it's ended? How can they help themselves prevent that from happening again? I think you've touched on a lot of it, but is there anything else that you would want to say that would help the child possibly not have that happen to them again?
Well, a thing they can do that I think is really simple is, there's a couple of things, but to try to role play with them. Okay. We do this a lot in therapy. If it's a young child, you could use little puppets, okay, and have them take the situation and role play it through in a way that's successful for them. Okay. And if they're older, you could just do an empty chair. It sounds silly sometimes that having them talk to an empty chair as though they're talking to that person, and teach them to be assertive and brave, but not aggressive, Very so good. That they don't do the same vicious cycle that the bullier is doing. The other thing I think is to teach them to walk away, that it's okay to walk away mm-hmm. from a bully, and that you're actually strong. You're the strong one.
Right.
And you retain your power when you walk away and when you try to avoid these kind of individuals, because somebody's picking on you and bullying you, you're not going to be able to reason with them.
Right.
So when you enter into it with them, a lot of times what will happen is you're going to look worse.
Exactly.
And you're going to feel humiliated.
Well, Audrey, thank you so much. This is wonderful advice. To view other episodes on bullying, please go to www.missionhealthyliving.org.